My next guest, Cynthia Dales, and I connected quite some time ago through a mutual group that we were in about weight loss. Cynthia has travelled to both ends of the spectrum. She discusses in this interview how not only was she discriminated as a very heavy woman, when she had weight loss surgery and lost a lot of weight and became quite thin, she was then discriminated against for being too skinny. And it's a really interesting conversation that we had leading into that moment, as well as what she did afterwards and how she gained balance in her life towards her food addiction and how she now offers her experiences to help others at both ends of that scale. Her WhyMe moments are touching as well as inspiring. I'll let Cynthia talk about her story as she does so eloquently, and to note that there will be a second podcast that I am starting called What the Flab, and it's all about weight loss and weight loss surgery. Cynthia has graciously accepted my invitation to return to being interviewed by myself for a very deep dive into weight loss and weight loss surgery, and I hope that you will also keep an eye out for that new show launching in February 2021, and also subscribe to that podcast if weight loss and weight loss surgery is something that interests you. If you are finding value in this podcast, please show your support by sharing with a friend and subscribing. It always helps when you leave a rating and review as a public show of your support for the work that we are doing. And I thank everyone for their efforts in doing so thus far.
Have you ever had one of those gut-wrenching moments where life ground you to your knees and you found yourself asking in despair, why me? This podcast is all about sharing your stories and journeys, from asking why me to declaring this is why me. Discover how ordinary human beings like you and I have found their extraordinary levels of hope, courage, compassion, and provided a new perspective for greater potential and self-empowerment during their darkest defining moment. As a creative artist and coach myself, my guests and I discuss the interconnectedness of emotion and transformation in those moments, and how their actions then seize the opportunity for discovering their unfiltered and authentic voice, and ultimately their life's purpose. I invite you to join me each week as we share insights into how adversity can be turned into a unique advantage. Today's guest is Cynthia Dales, also known as the Vegan Sleever. Cynthia and I met back in February of this year and have forged a lovely friendship over a similar outlook on life and a shared vision to help others become aware of their limiting beliefs and the way that these might be affecting their choices in life, including nutrition. Cynthia will be sharing her defining moment, which occurred around the death of her father, and a promise that she made. Welcome to the WhyMe podcast, Cynthia.
Thank you, Vera. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you on. And I always ask the big questions here first, such as, if you had to choose one book that has impacted your life the most, what would it be?
I would probably have to say the Bible, to be honest with you. Growing up in a house that's been traditional Lutheran, obviously, all my life, my family, I would probably say that's been one of the most impactful books in my life. Actually, one of my favorite is Psalm 51. Mm-hmm. Is probably my absolute favorite psalm in anything in the Bible, but that's probably my favorite.
I know for me, when I first started reading the Bible as an adult, I'd read lots of children's versions. And reading it as an adult, the book of John was the one that spoke to me the most at that point in time. I certainly got a lot out of that one as well. But, I mean, the whole book is still so valuable in today's society. It's called the living word.
Exactly. Even one of the schools that I worked at, they used the Bible as a historical text, as a supplement, which was actually really kind of cool because they were using it for history which I thought was kind of cool.
So how about you tell us a little bit about your story, Cynthia?
Back in 2009, my folks got divorced when I was 12. Let me back up a little bit. But my folks got divorced when I was 12. And there was about 17 years that I didn't know where he was, or really didn't have much contact with him at all, if any. I had woken up one morning and gone to work. I had a really pretty rough dream one night that I had to give the eulogy at my dad's funeral. Mm-hmm. And I remember calling my mom and saying, hey, can you come up and have lunch with me? I really need to talk to you about this. And so I kind of shared it with her. And then about 3 months later, my mom got a phone call from my grandparents, who were still living at the time, saying that my dad had contacted them because that was the only phone number he had, and said he wanted to make contact with his kids. He had had some type of a heart incident, and so he wanted to make touch base with his kids. And so that really was like, I was mad at my dad for a number of years. As a teenager, you don't understand all the nuances of divorce and all that stuff. But anyway, as I got to be an adult, my husband and I were still very young, and we moved in with my folks while we were saving for our first house. So I got to know my dad as an adult. And my dad was an incredible human being. My mom has always been my rock since forever, but I didn't know my dad, and getting to know him again as an adult was amazing. He had been through a lot. He was a recovering alcoholic, and so getting to know him was powerful for me, and it brought us really close together. And so we were told when we got married, we were told we couldn't have children. And in 2000, a miracle happened and we got pregnant. And so my dad hadn't been there for the birth of my brother's boys, but he was there to participate. And it's funny, I'm a pretty stoic person. A lot of times I try not to show a lot of extreme emotion in front of people. And when my dad came in after she was born, I lost it. I was crying because it just so much to me that he was able to be there. My dad got a diagnosis it was the beginning of 2009. He had been having some problems, and he had always had heart issues and those type things, but he was dealing with them. He had quadruple bypass, this, that, and the other thing. And, was doing okay. He had a pretty bad accident where a car had crushed his leg. And so he was retired early. That was a big transition for him, but was there. But early 2009, he was having some real problems with his breathing, and he went in and saw a pulmonologist and all this other stuff. And I remember we had to take him to the emergency room, and nobody would tell us anything. He was in extreme pain, and nobody would tell us anything. And finally, I got angry and went out, and this pain doctor came in and said, "Nobody's told you what's going on?" "No." "Well, you have lung cancer, and it has spread."
Wow.
"It's in your bones. It's gone to other organs." It wasn't in the brain at that point, which I'm glad it wasn't, but he was in extreme pain. So he they started to try chemotherapy, and he got into a second session, and it started causing mild heart attacks. And so he fought so hard. And then they went into the cath lab to see what was going on, because even his cardiologist was like, "Well, the chemo shouldn't be causing issues." And I'm like, "You're dumping battery acid into his body."
Yeah, it's pretty toxic stuff.
Yeah. So long story short, they came out of the cath lab and they said, he's got a widowmaker. It's 99% occluded, on top of one of the worst, most aggressive forms of lung cancer you can have. And the doctor's like, "You have to pick the worst of two evils." And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty crappy odds and pretty crappy decision to make." So we decided to take him home. My mom helped my mom make that decision, but to take him home with hospice. He fought like a warrior for 77 days.
Wow.
And we became so close. And he told me, when he lost his hair, I said, well, I'll shave my head, and he says, no, you're not going to shave your head. You have beautiful hair. You're not going to shave your head. And I said, yeah, I'm going to shave my head. And so I went and did it. And it was cool. I thought it was a really cool thing. When he was in the hospital, though, one of the things that he had said to me is, I came in one day and, being heavy and my whole life and trying to lose weight, I remember I would find my favorite candy on every floor. There was vending machines in the hospital, and I knew which machines had the candy I liked. And one day I came in and I was eating the candy, and he had this real serious look on his face. And he said, and he never did that. And he was one of those people that when he spoke, you listened, because it was usually something pretty profound. And he said to me, honey, don't let what's happening to me cause you to start overeating again. He says, you've worked too hard. And he was always so supportive of me. And my mom was too. Don't get me wrong. My parents are just amazing human beings. But hearing that from somebody who's dying from lung cancer, it was like, boom, right hook,
Yeah, you listen.
You listen. So he passed away the end of July. He was struggling. He had gone into hospice. And the last day I went there, I was always getting him stuff because he wasn't eating real well. And he would say, oh, this sounds good. And I would go wherever. I didn't care. If he wanted apple pie, I would go wherever he wanted. I spent a whole day looking for Manhattan clam chowder because it was, if he will eat, I will get it for him. And so the last day he had said, a hot dog with mustard and onions sounds really good. I said, okay, Dad, when I get done at the office, I'll come home. I'll come by the hospice and bring it to you. So we went and talked that night. I went and saw him, and he was pretty out of it. But I could tell he was hanging on for my mom because he was worried. He had shared with me he was really worried about her and what was going to happen to her and who was going to take care of her, because they had been, since they got remarried, they were so close. And I told him, I said, Dad, it's okay to go home. I'll take care of Mom. And he died that night. And I think he knew that I would fulfill that promise. It took me another 5 years before I finally realized I needed to get my health back on track, and get healthy so I could be around, for fulfilling my promise. And so in 2014 is when I decided to take that step and get gastric sleeve surgery so I could finally get healthy and lose the weight, because I had to fulfill my promise that I had made to him. And that was part of my why, was that I needed to honor what I had committed to be here to take care of my mom.
Wow. I have to say, I love that you gave him permission to go home.
He was a good man, and he was an amazing human being for everything that he had overcome. And, when I'm feeling down, or I'm feeling like I'm struggling, or I say, why me? It's like, no, I can't. No, I can't. No. If he was that brave to fight as hard as he did, no. So.
Yeah. So he found his inner warrior in that fight, well and truly. It sounds to me too that you managed after some time to also find yours.
It was tough. It was a tough battle. I've said this a million times, but the battle of being obese and overweight it's a head battle, and it's a battleground that it never goes away. food is the one addiction that you can't ever walk away from. And so you have to be strong. You do have days. And like my dad, he would have days. I remember one conversation we had, he said, I just wish the pain would go away for just one day. So I get my head around it. And then I'd be okay. You know, the battle of addiction, whatever addiction it is, or food or alcohol or drugs or whatever, I can understand that. Some days you're just like, I need to put the fight down for a while, but you just gotta keep going every day. You just gotta keep going.
Yeah. And so he had recovered from alcoholism.
Yeah. I remember that as a kid. My mom said she had never stopped loving my dad, but she didn't like what the alcohol had done. So they were, like I said, that was why the divorce had happened. And we moved across the country. And that's why I think he just lost track. But he was finding himself. He was finding, his recovery, his sobriety. So he had dealt with his demon, so to speak, and had been sober for a very long time. So very proud of that for him.
Yeah, for sure. I'm wondering, quite often in relationships where there is an addiction, quite often it's the addiction that breaks up the relationship, not the person. So it's the behaviors that result from that addiction. It's wonderful that he somehow got help and helped himself to get through that, to reconnect the family. I'm wondering for yourself, as you mentioned, food is one of those addictions that you can't completely remove from your life because we all need sustenance to keep living. And myself as a severe asthmatic and with my vocal cord dysfunction, I sought out the help from a buteyko practitioner. And she said that asthmatics are air addicts. And so in a very similar way, and she was right, because we overbreathe, because we're struggling all the time to breathe. And so we actually overbreathe, we overcompensate. And so I understand from 2 points of view, from being an air addict and being a food addict. These are difficult things to manage when you still require them to live. When you made the decision to have your gastric sleeve surgery, as you and I are both aware, there is an awful lot that leads up to that point. So you recognize that you had an addiction. Where do you think that came from?
I've often been asked, a lot of times they'll say there's that defining moment, or you figure out what caused or what. I've never ever been able to pinpoint a specific reason in my life. I don't know if it was because of the situation with my parents, but I kind of look at it, even though that's my past, as a teenager, as an adult, I still had that choice to continue eating, even though if that's what it was. But I've never really ever been able to define that, there wasn't like there was abuse or anything like that. I actually had a good childhood. I had a beautiful house that I lived in, and it was a really great situation with my mom. There was obviously some tension there with my parents, but my mom was very good about being very open and honest with us as kids and helping us through that process. But I really don't remember anything defining until probably I got older. As a teenager, being heavy as a teenager was extremely difficult. I think it probably went to a very unhealthy level of my eating because of being bullied, very severely bullied, picked on. And I think that's kind of when it maybe went to a really unhealthy level, I would say, is my eating really got out of control. Let me say it that way. My eating got really out of control and I got really heavy.
Yeah, and that then continued on through your adulthood.
Yeah. And even though I got married at, I think, 21, we both were heavier people. And so, unfortunately, I think we kind of fed off of each other as far as bad habits. And so I was working full time, going to school full time, doing my thing, and didn't care about food, struggled with it. And then I finally went in. I remember I'd gone in to the doctor's office and I wrote about this, but I remember standing on the scale and them telling me I was 292 pounds. And it was just like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And then you beat yourself up,
Yeah, I was going to say that's another boom moment, that is. I thank you for sharing that, especially that there's not always something that we can pinpoint a food addiction to. I know for myself, I was one of those kids. I also grew up in a beautiful family. I didn't suffer any real hardships until my marriage. So in all terms of reasons why, I never really had a reason why to be a food addict. I remember as young as in prep, so I would have been 6 years old, I was never able to satisfy my hunger. Eating was just trying to satisfy that intense hunger all the time. Mm-hmm. And I was a really, really active kid. I was always running around playing sports and doing things. So it wasn't like I was living a sedentary lifestyle either. And it also wasn't like I was eating junk food. My mum would pack our lunch at school and it would be a healthy sandwich and fruit. And if we were lucky, we would get one of those little fun-sized bars, which back then they were about probably half the size that they are these days. And, that was our one sort of treat that we might get, and we didn't get that all the time. And so technically there was no reason, but I was a very large kid all of my life until I got to my mid-teenager years. And that was because I basically had to calorie intake in the time when I possibly shouldn't have been, because I was doing my most growing and I was my most active. So it is important to note that not all of us have reasons, emotional reasons for being overweight. And I too also suffered with a lot of bullying from that. And I think it's important to be talking about this because it's not uncommon. And still a lot of people do not talk about that side of it. The side that when you are the largest person in the room, somehow you are still invisible. That one I could never fathom how that worked.
I know.
So you've made the decision to get the gastric sleeve done. You may get some faster results, but it's not a quick fix and it's not going to cure you. As you said, this is a lifelong struggle, having this food addiction. So what happened then?
Oh, well, that's when the real fun started, because within 9 months, I was so driven. Within 9 months, I had hit my goal. And so I was like, great. And I kept going and I kept going. And I was spending 3-4 hours in the gym, and I was really still calorie restricting, and I kept going. And I had gotten down to about 139 pounds, and I was in trouble. I had gone from one extreme to the other extreme. I was scared of food. I didn't deviate from what I ate every day because I was afraid of gaining weight. So I literally went the other direction. I was working with a trainer at the time, and I decided I wanted to do something more intensive. And so I tried to work with a couple of other trainers, and they wouldn't take me. They said, because you're a gastric, I was very honest with people. And I told them I was a gastric sleeve patient. They wouldn't take me because they said I couldn't eat enough food. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I had gone from being discriminated for being obese to being discriminated against because I was too thin. And I was like, is this real? Is this a real thing? And so I was angry. I would get mad when people would say I was skinny, because I was like, no, I'm not skinny. I'm fit. And they're like, no, you're thin. You're really, really thin. And I was like, how is this possible where you're being told, oh, you're fat, you're obese, you're blah blah blah, and then you go to the other side, and now I'm being told I'm too thin, I look like I have cancer. This is incredible. Is this really, really happening to me? And so I found this 25-year-old young man who was doing high intensity interval training, and he met with me. And he said, you're kind of a mess. But he says, I need you to eat like 2,400 calories a day if you're going to do this workout. And I looked at him, I said, are you serious? I said, I can't eat that much food. And so he says, if you want to work with me, then you're going to have to do it. And I was like, okay. So I would wake up, for the time I woke up till the time I went to bed, I was eating. And I'm like, how did I go from eating all this food and being heavy to now I'm thin and I'm having to start eating all this food again? And I was just like, this was boom. My head just was, mentally, I was really having some struggles. So I actually decided at that point, I was working out with him and I was doing great. I was feeling good. Everything was going okay. But I was having some other internal struggles. The bully in my head was really, I suffer from negative self-talk. And so I finally said, I need to talk to somebody. And so I actually started seeing this counselor who has a background in eating disorders. And she told me, you have an eating disorder. And I'm like, well, you don't get to be 200 or 300 pounds overweight, not have a bad relationship with food. But now I'm like, I'm here and now I have a bad relationship with food.
Yeah.
So I went from one extreme to the other. But honestly, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. And I know you're probably looking at me like I'm nuts, but it helps me understand the whole issue with food. It helped me figure out my head. And that's what it was all about. It wasn't about all the food. It wasn't about punishing myself in the gym. You can't out exercise a bad diet. Okay. It was about me figuring out in my head, what the Sam Hill am I doing? And figuring out the negative self-talk and beating myself up and finally coming to terms with, it's okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I went to a conference and I was feeling pretty bad. I was just like, I'd gotten to goal weight. I'd done all these things and I still didn't know what my why was, what I was doing. I was just like running around going, I'd had plastic surgery, I'd done all these things and I was still not figuring out my head yet. And I went to this conference and one of the guys had us yell this barbaric, and I mean barbaric, we had to scream at the top of our lungs, I'm not broken. And we had to yell it again, I'm not broken. And we had to yell it again, I'm not broken. And I mean, he wanted it full force in your face. And by the third one, I was just sobbing.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm not broken. I'm not broken.
Yeah.
That was a big defining moment for me of I'm not broken.
It's Vera-Lee from Australia, the founder of the WhyMe Movement and podcast. Well, one idea, one vision, one person. This self-funded podcast and movement has started to take a life of its own, which is exactly where I had planned it would be. To hear the stories of the far-reaching impact across many countries in this world, it humbles me to know that my vision is shared, understood, and positively influencing people to look at the changes they can make for their own adversity and how they can find the strength, the courage to be inspired and feel connected and empowered to use their adversity to their advantage. One of the best ways that you can help support the WhyMe Movement and podcast is to subscribe to the various channels, such as the podcast platform you are listening to this on now and the YouTube channel, which has much bonus content released. By subscribing, you will make sure that you are one of the first to find out who is coming up next, more about our guests, and the interesting questions that I ask them, which do not get released on the podcast platforms, and lots of other good bonus content. I always love reading your comments, and so please feel free to leave them on each of the platforms. The beauty of social media is that you can easily share single episodes or any of that bonus content from YouTube onto your own social media platform with your friends, which helps to bring this positive, inspiring message to far more people, allowing you to be an active participant in the WhyMe movement and vision. On Apple Podcasts, it always makes a big difference if you can leave a rating, review, and subscribe to the show. Let's get back to today's story.
Just because I have all this stuff and I've gone through all this stuff, this is just helping me. This is my journey because I need to know these things. And I didn't know why at the time, but it was that catalyst that was like, I'm not broken. And I want to help other people that have been down this road. This has all been that shaping, the taking those sharp edges off the rock to say, this is so you can help others. And that's when that was the defining moment for me. It's like this whole journey has been so that I can help others.
And not just help others at one end of the spectrum and help others at the other end of the spectrum. What you've done is you've experienced both extremes and everything in between, in going between those two extremes. And so the range of people that you are able to have relate to you and for you to relate to them at whatever stage they're at in, let's just simply talk about their weight loss journey, that allows you to reach so many more people with your level of experience at each of those stages. You've essentially, well, I'll let you answer this question. How do you feel about that promise you've made to your dad now, and how did you feel about it then?
At that point, I didn't feel like I was still doing what I needed to do. I was so driven, but I still hadn't done the mental work yet. And so I still felt like I hadn't completed that. And I know now that he's watching over me and he's guiding me through this and he's there with me because I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I know that helping other people is what using my gifts to be able to help other people on their journey. That's what my dad was always that way. As a mechanic, people would come and bring their car in and, they're always saying, sell, and he was like, no, we're just going to fix what they need fixed. And he always had return customers because he wasn't always in their face saying, oh, you got to buy this, you got to buy this. And he was always about giving. And my mom is that way. My mom is the most giving human being. And I feel so blessed that I've had both of them here in my life to help me finally figure out what I'm supposed to be doing and giving back, because they're both just some of the most selfless people I've ever met. And if I'm half that, I've done my job.
Yeah, it is so important to have good role models around us. And I think when your role models are your parents, your own parents, irrespective of that time in between, in essence, it really doesn't matter in the scope of things because you value the time you did have and you value all of those lessons that you learned. And it is so important to have good role models. Not everyone is blessed with parents that they look to as good role models. A lot of us are. And whatever your lot is in life, if you like, it is about seeking out those people that can help you to learn these lessons. And I think that conference going and being in that experience of the I'm not broken, I'd just like to touch on that for a little bit, because those moments, for someone who hasn't experienced them, some of our listeners will have experienced those moments, others will not. And for someone who hasn't had an experience like that, it is profound. So many of the times that we find ourselves in a situation like that, where someone is really getting to the deepest part of the core of who we are and speaking to our unconscious, our subconscious, and our conscious all at the same time, and allowing us to speak back and say, yes, I'm not like a piece of china. I don't break and am not repairable. I am not broken. I have every single day that I wake up an opportunity to be a little bit different than I was the day before. And that different is going to decide what, based on what choices we make, as to if we feel good about that change today compared to yesterday. And Dean Graziosi said a quote about 2 months ago that I just loved on one of his speeches. And it was that you don't compare yourself to other people, compare yourself to who you were yesterday. And it is such an important lesson to learn. I'm a little bit lost for words because I know what I know about your journey so far from since we've met.
Mm-hmm.
You've also been co-author in a book.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about that? Because that, again, is another profound moment. And I am making the assumption here that I'm not broken moment happened before you were given the opportunity to co-author.
Yeah. That was trying to explain. I actually went to that conference. Jason Cisneros was the person that was speaking at that conference. It was Dr. Vong's conference, Velocity, in 2019. And I went to Dr. Vong and I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be a personal trainer. I want to work with the bariatric community. I need to work with the bariatric community. And he said, I want you to go talk to Riyadh Hamande. And so I went to Riyadh and I said, and this is so out of character for me, at the time. And it took me a little bit of, okay, I can do this. And I went up and I said, hi. And I said, this is what I want to do. And he said, okay. And he's like, I will work with you. I will mentor you. And he said, you need to do this. 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 And I remember flying home on the plane thinking, oh my gosh, I think my life just changed forever. And I remember getting off that plane, getting in my car, driving home, and it's never been the same. And then I got the call from Riyadh saying, hey, I've got this opportunity to work with Dr. Ona Brown, Les Brown's daughter. Dr. Brown, or Les Brown, had done a book, Live Your Dreams, I believe, years ago. And she wanted to do a continuation of that book, Own Your Dreams. And we had to go through an interview process for the book. And it was amazing to meet some of these authors. I was like, I'm the little person on the block, I'm just talking about my weight loss journey and owning my dream. And because some of the stuff these people had been through, I was just in awe. I was just like, whoa, this is incredible. And so we started the process about 1.5 years ago. And it was I can't tell you, right. And it's only a chapter, but it's my chapter. It's part of my story that I've shared here, but it was so therapeutic. The only word I can use is therapeutic, to be able to, we did some creative writing exercises with the architect that helped us in the book. And this was, I'm telling you, the best therapy. It was the best therapy, being able to write this stuff out. And I would always sit in front of my laptop and I would just have this look on my face because I would just lean my head back and I would just go and go. And people would walk in the room and say, what are you doing? I'm writing. But it was being able to get this out and then to be able to share that and to be able to say, hey, this was my journey and part of it, and embrace your why, figure out your why you want to do this. I mean, I don't think people realize how important that is why you want to do this. And you got to be so specific. You can't just say, oh, I want to lose 5 pounds, or, oh, I want to lose 50 pounds. Man, you got to define that why, define that goal. And you've got to really hone it in and say, I want to weigh 150 pounds, or I want to do this, and be realistic too, because so many people set goals that are just so unrealistic. Be realistic for your body type, for your age, for your height, but be realistic. But also, why do you want to weigh that weight? Is it for your health and not for your grandbabies and not for your children? It's got to be something for you.
Yeah.
What you want. And it's got to be for your health. You know, that's a big one, is for your health, but why? And digging in and finding, that's the head work. That's the real head work of why you want to do this. This is the key to it. If you don't define that, it's going to be really hard to achieve it, because you don't have that constant drive to reach that goal.
Yeah, that's right. And you can be setting goals that are not related to your why, which means that when you achieve them, you won't feel fulfilled. And then you're wondering, well, why don't I feel good about this? I've achieved what I set out to achieve. Well, if those goals aren't in alignment with who you are and why you're wanting to achieve something.
Bingo.
Yeah, it is so important. And clarity around your purpose is very linked into your why. And as you said, it provides that motivation, it provides the momentum. And we all know that getting started, sometimes it's the hardest part. I'd be interested to know a little more about that creative writing process. I know that for me, when I start emptying my brain, I call it, I free write. So I just allow whatever's in there to dump out. And I've been doing it for so many years now that it is actually quite legible. You know, it makes sense. It actually comes out in quite a bit of sense. It's not so chaos anymore. And that's a skill that I think you develop as you do it more. Brainstorming and just doing that mental dump is so important. And that's another reason why so many people do morning pages or gratitude journals and things like this, because it gets that process going. If you have the habit of doing some sort of writing regularly, it is a very interesting process, particularly if you are looking for your why, to go back through and reread them. Now, depending on whose school of thought you go by here, if you take like a Julia Cameron morning pages, she says you don't ever look at them. And yet other people say, yes, you do go back and look at them, because there's actually a lot that you can learn. And I think the key is to what you feel is right for yourself at the point in time that you're at. And sometimes if there's some pretty heavy stuff in there, you may need to make sure that you're ready to handle what it is that you've written, particularly if you're very honest. And I'd love your opinion on this. For me, my writing is as honest as I get. It can't be any more honest, because for me, that's the point of why I'm doing it, to get that stuff out there. So how did you find that process of working with that architect and of the book and going through that creative writing process as a sort of a lead up to writing your chapter?
You know, the first assignment we got, we were supposed to talk about why we were doing this or something. And it was about something about creative writing. And I was like, the prompt that he gave us, I didn't like it. And I was so frustrated with the prompt. And so I wrote my paragraph or whatever, how many words, about how frustrated I was with this stupid prompt. I didn't like the question. And I was like, I don't like it. And I mean, literally, I just sat there on my laptop and I just, and I closed it and sent it. And it was so funny because the architect was like, wow, you were pretty passionate about how upset you were about this prompt. But that was the first, you know, I had written papers for school. I'd done presentations and all that, but this was just like me and they said they wanted us just to write whatever came into our head. Don't censor it. Don't just write. And that's what I did. And that was the first time I'd ever do that, because they were talking about right brain and left brain and getting us out of the one into the creative brain. I'd never really done that. And so it was like, after I did it, I was like, whoa, I kind of like this. So then the next time we met, it was a week later, we had another writing prompt it was about something that had happened in our life or something. And I really thought about it. And again, I tend to overthink when I'm doing, like, especially critical thinking. You're writing a paper and you want to be very meticulous and get your point across and blah, blah, blah. For me, it was like, nope. I just sat there and just tried to empty my head and just let it go. That was really fun for me, because that's not, hi, my name's Cynthia Dales and I have control issues, So for me, it was like a totally new world. I mean, I had done, like you said, brain dumps. If I have one of those nights where my head is spinning, I just get up in the middle of the night and I just will write out, this is what's bumping around in my head. And I do encourage that in my chapter in the book. I talk about that, because when it's bumping around up here, it really causes a lot of tension and stress, which isn't good for weight loss or in general for your body. Yeah. And so I would get up and write that thing down. And it was amazing how I could go back to sleep, because it was like it was out of my head. So this was taking it to a whole new level. And so then he was maturing us, I guess would be the best word, along the process, because then it was like, okay, we want you to write about this specific event, because it was trying to teach us where to go with what we were going to write in our chapters. So it was like building blocks. We were building by each one we were writing. It was like teaching us the process of creative writing. So it was fascinating for me. And it was, like I said, it was very liberating. It was very therapeutic.
Yeah, what a fantastic opportunity and experience to have.
And to be able to work with some amazing other people. I mean this very sincerely. Some of the people in this book, I'm just in awe of what they've achieved in owning their dreams. It's just, and to come with such like-minded people that want to make an impact in the world is just such an amazing opportunity. And I'm so thankful I was part of that opportunity.
Yeah. And I love that you use like-minded people there. And I'm going to go back to that comment that you were sort of like, well, where do I actually fit in here because of what these other people have been doing in their lives? Having gone through the process of the book being published, gone through that experience of leading up to it and all of that learning, what do you now think about that and your chapter in the story?
You're so good. I know that I'm making an impact in this world. I'm making an impact in people's lives, one person at a time, including myself, because I'm learning every day and I'm growing as a person every day. So, like I said, for me, it's like, if I can impact one person's life in this world, if I can help one person figure out their journey and be a part of that journey, then I've done my job too. So I'm just another dream owner, just like everybody else in this book. So, and I'm very blessed and very thankful to be a part of it, because, like I said, I'm part of that team of people. As I wrote in there, it's like, mine's a little weight loss story, but it really is so much more than that.
It really absolutely is. And here we're going to touch on the extent of your impact, even just in Dr. V's community. Let's face it, the responses from people has been phenomenal, which is good. And I hope that you are taking that on board again. And it's that concept of self-belief. And for me, again, I'm going to ask your opinion on this. For me, when you've been obese, when you've gone through that bullying, when you've gone through those struggles and you've had both of the extremes, and in a way I've had extremes as well, I understand that whatever point you get to where you say, okay, that's now under control, that's now under control, that's now under control. I've done a lot of inner work. You still have to work at certain things. There is still that part of you that remembers, and a lot of the time that is unconscious, that remembers what it was to be like that. And so seeing the reaction that your weight loss peers have explained about reading your chapter in the book, I hope that that has added to your level of understanding of the impact that you really are having.
I thank you for that. I'm overwhelmed and very touched that my story has made that impact on people, and that was my whole intent of being able to write it. I'm not being funny here, but I still am a very sometimes I'm a little shy, little self-conscious. Obviously, as you said, I come out of my shell. I know the first time I met Dr. B, he came up to me and he's like, "Are you enjoying yourself?" And I was like, "Oh man, this is great." And he's like, "You're so quiet. You're so shy," and it's like, now I can be a little bit of a rabble rouser, as they say, but I'm still, I know it's funny because when I do my exercise videos, people are like, "You're so calm and and that's, for me, that's huge." People don't understand. I used to be a human stress ball. So for me, this has been a huge transition. And I like helping people. It's just, I heard this a long time ago, but when you pour yourself out all the time and you keep pouring from that vessel and you don't refill that vessel, it becomes empty. And for me, helping people achieve goals that they have, weight loss, whatever that is, whether it's figuring out what works best for their body for food or exercise or whatever, that fills me up. Those 2 pounds that they lost last week, I celebrate that with them. And not because I helped them with that, because for me, it fills me up that I was there to assist them on that journey. And so that's their victory. And I celebrate that with them, and that fills me up. And that's what I enjoy so much about being able to help people, is because it fills me up. It gives back to me. So this is a dual street. I'm helping people, but it helps me because that's my purpose. And that's the whole thing. You hit the nail on the head. Finding your why, embracing your why, is finding your purpose.
Yes, and being selfish sometimes, and I use the term selfish not as in a negative term, as in sometimes you need to be making sure you're taking care of yourself first to ensure that you can continue taking care of those others that you are helping and impacting.
That's exactly it. I use this analogy a lot, but it is so true. When you're on a plane, and if that little oxygen mask comes down, what do they tell you? They tell you to put it on yourself first and then help the person next to you. Because if you're not there to help that person, if you don't put that oxygen on yourself, you can't help somebody else. So you have to figure it out. It's not selfish, it's taking care of you. It may seem selfish, but if you're not here, then you cannot share your story and make your impact in the world. And we all have a story to share. We all have something that we can make a difference in this world. So you hit the nail right on the head there.
Yeah, we absolutely all do have a story. And I've said in a few podcasts, and I'll say it again because it is so important and it is a massive part of my why. I knew a lot of my why back 15 years ago when I started my business. My tagline was, "Everyone has a story if we're willing to listen." The fact that I wasn't able to put that into full effect until this year is irrelevant. Everything I had done, all the struggles I had been through, all the mindset training, everything I'd done up to this point has allowed me to go, I'm doing a podcast. Go and get the training about the logistics of it. Already knew what the end result was going to be. Now I can put it all together and do it. That doesn't just happen suddenly. That happens from many, many years of getting your clarity, working out who you are as a person, working out where your passions lie, how you're going to manage looking after yourself to be able to then impact many, many others. And yeah, so it's a very important part of the process. I would like to know the other struggle that is something that, to be honest, we've all gone through and we will all continue to go through for the rest of our lives because it is human nature to have the negative self-talk. How have you been managing that now with your experiences and the training that you've done? We know it never goes away. However, there are different ways of managing and dealing with it. How do you deal with that now?
A lot of times when that comes up, it's usually I'm struggling with something. And so what I've learned to do is to really sit down and think about, whether that's through meditating, whether it's just through quiet time, whatever, but to really think about, okay, why am I saying this to myself? What is going on in my head? It's having a different dialogue. It's changing the dialogue. It's exposing that talk to say, why is this happening? And what do I need to do? Before it was, I was always very hard on myself, extremely hard on myself. But now it's a different kind of hard on myself because it's more of a, hey, you got to take this to the next level. You got to take this to the next step. It's more of a positive versus a negative. And so, but I think turning that rock over and saying, why are you saying this to yourself? What's going on? What's underneath this? And saying, let's think about this for a minute. Why are you saying this? Whereas before it was like going 3 rounds with an MMA boxer. It was just like, you just beat yourself up. You're fat. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. And now it's more like, oh, well, you could have done this better. Well, what could I have done better? Why do you, inside I'm going, why do you feel that way? And so it's a different, I don't know if it's as negative and it's not as critical. But I think getting to where I am now, I understand my own thinking a little bit better. And one of the phrases that Dr. Vong uses a lot is the lean back. And that I've really taken to heart because sometimes I have to stop and go, okay, let's just take a minute here and think about what's going on and why I'm feeling this way. And looking at those, there's that anxiety chain. That's one of the things I learned, but that anxiety chain and stopping at and going, okay, why are you feeling this way? Why are you getting anxious? So that took a long time for me. But it's been huge for me, huge.
Yeah, it is a huge thing. I mean, it's a process in itself. And I love that you look into the underlying reasons of that self-talk. That helps you to look at this as information rather than it's spoken, it must be right or it must be real. Because a lot of that self-talk is not necessarily an accurate description of what's actually going on. And as humans, we are wired towards the negative naturally for safety. That's part of our DNA and our makeup. It doesn't mean that we can't change that and how we interpret that information and use it. And I love that you're aware, and awareness is a huge thing when we talk about any sort of mindset training, mindfulness, negative or positive self-talk. That awareness and then the ability to say, okay, let's just step back for a minute, gain a slightly different perspective. And you said it earlier about that moment that everything changed. Nothing had actually changed except your perception of yourself and where you wanted to go in your life. And if you are aware of those moments, that right there gives you the power or the awareness of the power that your mindset and attitude really does have over everything that it is that you can do. I would like to know a little more about why you chose to be vegan. Now, I'm asking this question. I've already had this discussion with you. And when we first spoke, I said to you, I'm considering going vegan. I'd like to know, why you went vegan. What are the benefits? Do you miss meat and all those other things? So how about for our listeners, you fill them in a little bit on why and what really veganism means to you. And I know that you have some great results you're going to share with us as well as part of that discussion.
It's a lifestyle. Okay. And some people are very much about, I've adopted parts of it, but I'm not fanatical. I did it more for my health. And here's why. The Reader's Digest version, which is rare with me, I'm more like my dad than a lot of people know. Physically, I'm a lot like my dad. And so I was starting to have some weird heart things going on. And even though I had lost all this weight and thought I was, a rock star, I had started feeling kind of weird. And I went in and saw my doctor, and she said, we've got this murmur, which I've always known. My dad had the same thing. And they detected like what they called a prebeat, which I guess I have good rhythm. I don't know. I was like, okay. And so she says, we're going to go do this calcium score test on you and see what's going on, just to see if there's any issues with your arteries, because my dad had severe coronary artery disease. Even though thought I was eating right, and I was healthy, and I was, busting it and doing protein. And I remember driving home, and I looked down, it was the PA that had called me, and she was the one that actually approved me for surgery, my gastric surgery. So she's been on my whole journey. And she said, where are you? I said, I'm in my car. And she goes, are you almost home? I said, yeah. I said, you're freaking me out. What's going on? She goes, we need to talk for a minute. And I said, okay. So I pulled in front of the house, literally. And she said, we got your calcium score back. I said, okay. And I was thinking, They said, over 100 is not great. They want it basically at 0. But anything over 400 is considered pretty severe. And she said, you have the highest calcium score we've ever seen in somebody your age.
Wow.
And I literally I lost it. I started crying, and I went in the house, and I just looked at my mom and I said, what? I've worked so hard and gone through all of this, and for what? I was angry. Needless to say, I was extremely angry. And I was like, what the hell? So she says, my doctor had said, you need to go see a cardiologist right away. And I said, okay, well, I'll go see the one that I'd seen before before I'd had gastric surgery. So he had me run through all these tests, the EKG, the echocardiogram. They had me do a nuclear stress test, which was fun, not. And so he said, well, you have coronary artery disease. And he said, you have to be perfect. And I said, okay, elaborate. What does that mean? I don't walk on water. What does that mean? And he said, well, you have to be perfect. And I said, okay, can you give me a little bit more information here? I'm asking, what do I need to do? How do I fix this? And he said, well, you have to be perfect in your diet. You have to be perfect with your blood pressure. You have to be perfect with your cholesterol, your triglycerides, And we need to monitor you very closely. So on your way out, make sure you make an appointment in a year. And I was like, what?
Monitor you closely, but make an appointment in a year.
In a year. So I called, I didn't even call my PA back at that point. I was so frustrated. I literally came home and I got on my computer and I said, what is the cure for coronary artery disease? And it said plant-based vegan. So this was in October, November 1st. I said, Mom, and my mom's pretty much vegetarian anyway. She's probably one of the healthiest people I know. And I said, Mom, I need your help. I need to do this to fix this. And so would you do this with me? Would you help me? And she said, absolutely. And so November 1st last year, I'm coming up on my 1 year. I went completely vegan, plant-based. And so I still do eat, well, and I'll explain that in just a minute, but I basically said, that's it. And so I would pick the worst time to do it. Anybody that decides they're going to do this, please go vegetarian first, then go vegan.
Yeah.
Don't go from fifth gear to first gear. It's a really hard shift for some people. But I said, that's it. So I went through Thanksgiving. I went through Christmas. You know, those are big. Our family's big on those big meals, the big ham, the big turkey, you know, da, 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 da. So I did a lot of experimenting and did a lot of different things. And I was like, so 60 days later, I'd had my blood work run 60 days later. And I was doing this not only for myself at this point, but for my potential clients. I wanted to show them that this is something that will change your life. Eating plants will change your life. Because I did it for 60 days and I felt really good. And I thought, okay, I want to run my blood test. So I went in and saw my doctor and I said, let's run some blood tests. And she's like, well, what happened? I haven't seen you. What's going on? And I explained the whole story to her. And she was furious.
Yeah,
and she's like, no, you need to go see this new cardiologist. I was like, okay, yeah, but run my blood test. And in 60 days, my triglycerides had dropped over 106 points. My cholesterol had dropped like 105 points. My bad cholesterol had really dropped, the really, really bad cholesterol. And then my good cholesterol, it was really good. It was in the 70s. It was phenomenal. It was just like, okay, just from taking the meat out of my diet, the eggs and dairy, and just eating things that are grown in the ground, I could not believe it made that big of a difference.
That really is phenomenal in a 60-day period.
Yeah, it was incredible.
It's huge.
I was stunned. I mean, literally, I was literally just giddy. I could not believe it made that much difference to just to switch to eating plants, mostly plants. And so I was like, okay. So my doctor wanted me to see this new cardiologist, and I went in and saw them. And there were still some issues, but my cardiologist, the one I saw, I didn't know this, but there's actually two kinds of cardiologists. There's the regular cardiologist, and then there's what they call the interventionalists. Those are the ones that do like actual surgery and stuff on the heart.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know. So I saw the one, Dr. Grossman. He's an amazing guy. He actually eats more vegetarian, which I thought, a cardiologist that eats vegetarian. Wow, this is great.
Yeah.
So really nice guy. And so he had me see this other one, and they did an angiogram. That's where they actually go in, and they go in with most of the time.
Did they do yours through the arm?
They did mine through the arm. Yeah.
Wow. Because usually through the groin.
Exactly. And so they wanted to see how bad this was. And so the woman, the interventionalist cardiologist, was a woman. Her name's Amy. I can't pronounce her last name, so I just call her Dr. Amy. But she was phenomenal. And I loved her because she said to me, she got into the field of cardiology because she was tired of women, especially my age, middle-aged women, getting placated by male doctors and saying, it's okay, just go home and lose weight. You'll be fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. And she said some colorful sentence enhancers kind of thing in a gentle way, though. But she was like, no. So she said, no, we're going to do an angiogram on you. And I was like, okay. So I wasn't nervous. I trusted her implicitly, went in, had that done, which was a really cool experience. I know it's not the most pleasant, but I thought it was awesome because it's like, here you wake up and they've got this 80-inch TV and your heart's up there and they could see what it's doing.
Wow.
But anyway, they wheeled me into recovery, and I was still a little loopy. And she came in with her phone, and she's got my heart and all this stuff showing right on her phone. And I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm going, wow, this is really cool that technology can do this now. I thought, really, this is awesome. So she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, this is the best case scenario. She says, you have the best kind of coronary artery disease. And I went, Oh, really? There's a good kind? And she said, because it's on the outside wall and it's not clogging. She said, she literally put her hand on my shoulder and she says, you don't have to be perfect. It's okay. And that was really cool. But I said to her, I said, I've come too far now. And now I'm on a mission to prove that this is a better way of life for people. It's healthier for them. And so I was like, no, I think I'm going to stay this way. And so that was a huge defining moment for me. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And so now I've totally embraced this way of life. And
well, as you said earlier, you were looking at it as a lifestyle as well. And so it makes sense to me that once you were given permission to do essentially what you thought was best, you'd already spent those 60 days, well, it was longer by this point in time, but you'd already spent that time establishing new habits, establishing a new lifestyle, working even further on your mindset.
mm-hmm.
And so I love that you didn't say, oh, hey, I've essentially been given a whole pass. Well, let's just go back to what I was doing, because you know where that got you.
Mm-hmm.
That is phenomenal. Good on you.
And the cool part is, though, I just had blood work run and it's been 10 months now and my numbers have gotten better.
Again.
And it's like, this is crazy. I mean, you know, you hear a lot of people say you can't get enough protein. You can't do this. You can't. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can do this. And it's so much better. You know, our bodies are designed, you know, fiber is huge for weight loss. And those plants have amazing nutrients. Now, as a vegan, you do have to supplement with B12. Well, guess what? I'm a vegan and I'm a gastric patient, so I have to supplement with B12 anyway. So,
yeah,
deal, you know. So, but this has been a really cool, and I don't tell my clients or people that want to work with me nutrition-wise, or I don't tell them, hey, you got to be vegan. I work with meat eaters, non-meat eaters. I just want you to have the best food that you can possibly have. I want you to know where your food comes from. And so, you know, when I met you, I was kind of on that whole journey, and I had gotten my transformation specialist certification on top of my personal trainer. And then I got my nutrition certification. I just recently got that as a nutrition coach. So now I'm an elite level 1 trainer, and I'm not stopping there, because now I want to become a master trainer, because I know I have a story that I can help other people with. And even if they just make small changes of taking their plate, doing half vegetables, and, you know, just make small changes to make improvements in their life, because my blood work tells me that I know this is the right thing to do. And so I'm just going to keep on this journey, because I want the proof. I want the proof that this is actually going to fix my coronary artery disease. I want it to show that in another year, it's going to be better, and it's going to get better, and it's going to get better. So now I'm on a mission to prove that this is actually a good thing to do.
You have clarity around your why.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said earlier, it changes everything when you gain that clarity and you really know your why and you know your who, because that's the other part of the equation. You might find your why, but if you don't know who your who is that matches up with your why and your vision, then you could be doing fantastic work, but nobody will be seeing or hearing it, because if you're falling on the wrong ears. So you know your why, you've worked out your who, and I can certainly attest that when we spoke, that you have a lot of knowledge on the area and that you're not pushing any one way. What you're doing is you're giving people the information to make their own choice, which is where you found your way in making your own choice.
Mm-hmm.
And when people come to that realization themselves and they've taken ownership and accountability for their choices, that is how they start defining their own why.
Yep. That's where the real growth is. That is where the real growth is. You know, my grandmother was an amazing woman. She always said, when you stop learning, you stop growing. And it's so important just to keep moving forward, you know. Yeah, we have those days where we kind of, but okay, you know, just pick yourself back up, dust yourself off, tell yourself you're sorry, tell yourself you love yourself, and move forward, you know.
Yeah, that's
every
it.
day.
It's that taking action. I can't remember if I've put this particular inspiration card up or not, but I have a picture of a tennis player who ended up flat on his belly on the ground. And the quote I put up with it is, you remember those days when you just feel like you can't get up? Just do it anyway.
Yep.
Because it's that action that makes the difference. It's that choice that, you know what, I don't feel like it today. I'm going to do it anyway. Because I know my why, I know the reasons, I know how this is helping me. And I know that taking action, even if it's imperfect action, and sometimes because it's imperfect action, it's the taking action and the movement that allows for that continual growth instead of being stagnant or static.
I have met some of the most amazing people since, you know, when I started this. You know, I had 5 women. You were one of them. And I was in just such awe of all of your stories and your journeys. And I was just like, I was just blown away. And I was just like, wow, this is so powerful. And it was so inspiring to me because it was just like, I was just amazed. And it was just like, wow, you know, we all have stuff that can help people, other people on their journey. And man, it was just so powerful. You guys helped me so much because I was trying to figure out how to get my certifications and everything else. And you guys were just helping me. And I was learning as a new coach and new trainer, and you were so helpful for me. So I thank you for that. I've been impressed watching you. I mean, when I talked to you, I was just like so inspired by you. And I mean that very sincerely. I was so inspired by you. And now I watch what you're doing now, and I'm just like, wow, you're killing it. You're amazing. You're just an amazing human being.
I'm laughing, but thank you, Cynthia.
Yeah.
And as you said earlier, that works both ways. And I'm a firm believer that when we connect with people, I'm not talking about a hello, nice to meet you, okay, exchange a bit of information and leave. I'm talking about when we really connect with people. There is that ebb and flow between us. There is that proximity, not geographical, obviously, because we're in different countries and cultures and all the rest of it. I'm talking about that people who you surround yourself with, that you do by choice, that you have a connection and you converse with each other. It is that back and forth. It is that listening, active listening, speaking, exchanging. I mean, that's what life's about, isn't it? Inspiring each other and sometimes inspiring ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. And we all have stuff that we can help other people learn, and just being friends. I mean, I think it all comes down to, we all have that basic need of wanting to connect and be a part of someone and be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's what this is all about. That's what it's all about.
It totally is. And I use the acronym ICE when I refer to this podcast, and the I stands for inspire, the C stands for connect or connection, and the E for empower. And when you have a connection that inspires you, you will feel empowered. It's so important.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, I like it too. Well, thank you so much for being here, Cynthia. If people would like to buy a copy of the book and if they would like to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
The easiest way is to go to my website, which is cynthiadales.com. And there's a pop-up that comes up about the book. It's on Amazon now. Yay. And if you go through my link, I think they're still offering some bonuses. I don't know if it's still at a discounted rate. But if you go through my link on my website, I think there's still some bonuses from Les Brown, which, you know, he's an incredible human being. So, which is awesome. So, and he wrote the foreword on the book too, which is really amazing. So
very cool. And I will make sure that those links go in the show notes so that people can click and go straight there. And awesome. I would encourage people to
go through that link with Cynthia. It helps support Cynthia, helps support the podcast simply by showing your support. And that's not going to cost you any extra to do that. And it's a lovely way that we can help each other, and also, of course, sharing the episode. If you like what you hear and if you're gaining value out of these episodes, and I know that so many people who have contacted me and contacted people that have then contacted me to let me know this podcast is making impact because of the people, because of the stories, and we all do have a story to share. At the same time, when we listen, we all have things that we will resonate with from the stories being shared. So thank you so much, Cynthia.
Thank you, Vera. I sincerely thank you from my heart for having me on and chatting with me. I always enjoy talking with you. This is great. So thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
You're most welcome. Well, another story, more WhyMe moments, and more reasons to feel inspired to change your adversity into your advantage. An integral part of the vision of the WhyMe movement is the ICE acronym, I's for Inspire. When you feel inspired, you are more likely to take action. C is for two things, actually. Connection. You are not alone in this world. There are always people here who want to help you get through your adversity and feel positive about your life and your purpose. It is also for courage. Courage, in my opinion, is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And there lies the importance of connection. For sometimes we don't feel we have the courage to do things on our own. And yet once we have the emotional support of those people who we trust, it can help us to feel that fear and do it anyway. And lastly, the E is for empower. When we have that connection and the courage and the inspiration to know, get our clarity of purpose, well, that is when we feel empowered to take the action that we want to do to change some aspect of our lives for the better. If you would like my personal support in this area to help you get through adversity in your life, you can contact me at Vera-Lee Original on social media.